farm kids and rural kids, you're supposed to get up, wipe the dirt off, and move on, right?
Yeah.
And we were never real huggy in our family or anything like that.
Welcome to the Carla Rand Show, a weekly podcast designed to dig into the lives of everyday people. People who are making a positive impact, people who have risen above and overcome obstacles. Insights and stories from ordinary individuals who inspire us all towards the truly extraordinary. Here's your host.
Hey, it's Carla, and today I get to talk to Kirk Wildman. And Kirk and I met through, we both raise Red Angus cows. So my family does, his family does. And so we were actually, my husband and I were purchasing some bulls off of him for our cows. We also purchased some cows off him, purchased some heifers off him one time. So he's a farmer from way back and has had that family farm. But something really had impacted his life, his family's life, when their son was diagnosed with cancer. And so that was a huge process. So he's sharing his story about that, how that worked. And just there's a happy ending to the story. And I'm really thankful for that because it's not always that way. But he's shared some really good insights for those of us who maybe know other people that are dealing with cancer, or maybe we're going through that right now with someone we know, or maybe ourselves. Just some insights, some tips on like how to get through that. And one of the things that he said was to be positive and how that helped him, and to really trust the doctors, trust the process. Those are some of the things that were real big takeaways for me. So I'm really excited to hear from him. So let's get into the conversation. Kirk Wildman, thank you for being here. Welcome to the Carla Rand Show.
Oh, it's great to be here, Carla.
Yeah, nice. I'm really glad that you decided to do this with me because I was like, I don't know if Kirk's going to do it. You're not really like, you've been in public a lot, but you're not really like the kind of person that might go on a podcast or something. And I think at first you were a little hesitant, right? You were kind of like, what am I going to say? What am I going to do?
Yeah, you always think other people are more interesting than you. But if I can give you a story or two, that's kind of what we're after here. So glad to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Kirk, I just want to give an introduction a little bit so that people understand kind of like how we know each other. So we know each other through the cattle business, and more importantly, the Red Angus cattle business, because that's really where that's where the rubber meets the road here when it comes to cattle, in my opinion, and I think in your opinion. Although you got quite a few blacks too now. You're getting more Black Angus, aren't you?
Yeah, it's still probably 80% Red Angus though,
Yeah.
and 20% Black Angus. But yeah, we've been raising them for. My parents actually celebrate their 50th year raising purebred cattle this year and stuff, and they're going to get an award and stuff. So I'm 47, just about 48 now. So it's been what I've done my whole life too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of a little history. We go back. I knew your sister before I knew you, Laura, actually, because Laura and her husband, Stacy, and his family had bought bulls from us when I was a little kid. So
Oh, wow.
I've known your family secondarily for a long time. And then we've been working with you guys for the last probably 10 years or so, right?
Yeah,
With some bulls and things like that.
Yeah, we got some really good bulls off you. And so actually we sometimes will share bulls with my parents, right? So we're kind of sharing these bulls, and but yeah, we're getting trying to get, some of your best bulls. And so that's always kind of fun. But why don't you take us back? So you kind of talked about you grew up on the farm and everything with the family. Take us back to like, what were you like? What was little Kirk like when he was about 12 or 13 years old in junior high? What were you up to then? What were you like?
Yeah, so I guess played quite a few sports. I was never the most talented player on any team, but I tried to work the hardest and hustle. So I always had a scraped arm or a scraped knee or the dirtiest uniform because that's kind of how I was raised and put together.
What sports did you play?
So we're in a small school, so you almost had to play everything.
Right, I
A
get
little
that.
bit of volleyball. My favorites was playing ball, probably the fastball. We played a lot of fastball as kids and went to the summer games one year with that and stuff. And never played hockey. My two older brothers played hockey a little bit when they were little, and Dad kind of said, "You guys can either do 4-H or hockey," and I strongly suggest 4-H. So.
Yeah.
So they went into 4-H and I followed suit and never did play hockey. I can't skate a lick now
Man.
or anything like that. I really enjoy all sports and watching sports and sports fan and everything. But so we played lots of ball, and then that turned into slow pitch as we got a little older, and
Mm-hmm.
but in the summer we'd show cattle all the time. So there was no going to provincials or anything like that because the summer was busy with farming and going to cattle shows. So a lot of my friends as a teenagers and stuff were cattle kids and 4-H kids and stuff like that. We spent a lot of time doing that. And then in the fall, showing cattle and going to sales and stuff. So yeah, I was kind of I wasn't you know a talented, spoiled kid that trained all summer or anything. You just went from sport to sport
Yeah.
to do them and to help out the school and take part in that sort of stuff.
Well, you're too busy farming. I mean, I know what that's like, right? Like growing up too, I didn't really play that many sports. I didn't have much opportunity for, first thing. And my kids, like they play school sports and stuff, but I don't have them in a million things because you got to be home, you got to check cows, you got there's fencing, like there's just so much work to do. So it's certainly like I think when you grow up on a farm, especially with beef cows, you're not looking for things to keep your kids busy. If anything, I'm like, I want my kids home because they need to help me out. Do you find that too?
Yeah, and our kids now are Thomas is graduating, so he's 18, and our twins, Reese and Ryder, are 13, just about 14. So they're really lots of help on the farm now too. So
Yeah.
this COVID deal with them being at home has been quite a help. We're get through the schoolwork in the morning, and then we can get lots of work done. And so this will be. They're a little sad because they don't get to go to summer shows and stuff this summer and cattle shows, but they're going to learn how to do a lot of good fencing and things like that.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of how I grew up too. There was lots to do on the farm,
Yeah.
and I got to have cattle, of my own, and that's how I helped to pay for college and stuff was with my bulls and stuff like that. The dad, we kind of traded feed for working on the farm, so
Cool.
it kind of set us up for the future too.
Yeah, that's what we do with our kids too. They each kind of have their, they get a heifer or whatever, and then they got to raise it, and then they can, upgrade or get another one or raise that calf, right, and like help out. So my daughter, if we do have a bottle feed baby, well then she's got to do the bottle feeding, right, and then if in exchange for stuff, so kind of teaching them a little bit about finance and a little bit about like how to make it go. So you got into raising Angus cattle specifically because that's what your dad raised, and so you just automatically that's what you raised, basically, right?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, when I started out, I liked the black ones best when I was a young kid. So I had a few black Angus of my own, kind of to be different. And but when it came time to selling bulls, the red ones always sold the best in our sales. So I
Hmm.
I quickly switched over, and
Yeah.
that's what paid for my truck and going to college and things like that.
Yeah. Well, and you guys have some really nice bulls. Like some of the bulls that we've gotten from you have been just like really incredible. And so we're actually raising bulls as well. And so now we have all these nice heifer bulls that are looking top notch. So thank you for that, Kirk. Those are some good bulls you're raising.
Well, that's kind of what you do. I don't think we're never going to be the richest breeders in the world, but we've been around this long because we try to keep them sound and right and keep our customers happy. So
Yeah, exactly. And you do that. And people just keep coming back for more. So that's awesome. Um, Okay, so I want to kind of get into now. We talked about the raising the cattle. You have three kids. You had Thomas, and then Reese and Ryder were twins, right?
yeah,
Are twins. They weren't were twins. They are twins. Okay. So I
yeah,
kind of want to get into one of the main things that I wanted to talk to you about, although we could talk about cattle probably all day, but I want to talk about Thomas, your first son, because you have a story about him. He had an illness. Can you kind of get into that, Kurt? Can you kind of give us some context? How did that happen and what happened with him? And then again, like where he is now, just kind of go through that journey.
sure, yeah. So guess we'd start about the summer of 2010, and Thomas was 8, so he was between grade 2 and 3 in that summer. And my mom had actually been diagnosed with breast cancer that spring as well, so she was going through some chemo, like kind of late spring, early summer. So we kind of she was going through that, and we were supporting her through her treatments and stuff like that. And then Thomas and in June of that year, I'd been on the board of the Canadian Angus Association for a number of years, and I got elected president that June. So yeah, we were pretty busy, but Thomas and I actually got to take a guys trip to Toronto and Montreal that year because the Junior Angus show was in Montreal, and I was expected to be there. So Thomas and I went, and we actually flew into Toronto first and went to the Hockey Hall of Fame and got to see that because Thomas is a huge hockey fan and historian type of a kid. And then we got to spend a couple days at the show too. So we had a nice trip that summer. And then we got home and got ready to go to school. And Thomas was in grade 3, like I said, and he kind of picked up a cold, but lots of kids do that in the fall when they get back to school, right? So we weren't super worried about it. And then just kind of progressed, and it got worse and worse, and he was having trouble breathing and sleeping and seemed to be coughing a lot. So we took him into the local hospital, and they diagnosed him with bronchitis. So we're on that antibiotics for a week or so. I guess about a week, and then it just things weren't getting any better, and we took him into the hospital, and they put him on a nebulizer, kind of to get him breathing good again on like a Friday night. By morning, he was still not in good shape. Took him back again, and that Saturday night, I took him, and just wasn't right and wasn't doing well, and so that Sunday morning, we were having breakfast, and the doctor that got looking at some of his X-rays and chest X-rays and stuff, he said, "You better get him to the stollery right away."
Mm.
So we just live at Sangudo, so we're West Edmonton, about 75 miles. So my wife, I stayed home, and my wife basically ran to the city with Thomas, took him to the emergency room, and then things really went fast. um, he was, they were, they didn't say leukemia or cancer right off the bat, but that's what they were worried about, and so they got him on some steroids and things like that, and so yeah, things really moved fast. Jill called me, said I better get in there, and kind of hinted at what they thought it was. So I was driving to the city. It was quite a trip. I think I pulled over 3 or 4 times, just to get myself together.
Mm.
And then we got in there and we got talked to the doctors at that point. And so what they did, they got him on steroids right away. And what he had was a tumor in his chest, basically constricting his lungs and his windpipe. And they kind of explained it as like a big kind of a water bottle sized. So it wasn't a tumor like an apple. It was just a spread out kind of mass of cancer cells. And they were pushing down on his lungs and his windpipe, and he just couldn't breathe right. So we went directly to the pediatric ICU, and yeah, so that was kind of the first step, and the steroids worked really well, and they got him breathing good again, and then we started going on to the next step. And so that was meeting with the doctors, and they told us he had leukemia. There were still some tests, but that was basically where they were at, and that we had to start a treatment program and a chemotherapy program, basically. And they told us with boys, they're more likely to have problems in their private areas with leukemia and cells and stuff. So it was going to be 3.5 years of treatment is what the plan was. So
How old
so
was
that was
he?
kind of our original.
How old was he again? Sorry.
He was
When this
he was 8.
8. Okay.
Yeah, he just turned 8, and yeah. So and looking back, we'd seen, we actually took family pictures the week before, and when you look at the pictures now, you can see that his face it was all puffed up, and things weren't right, and you could kind of see it after, but you never know. But when you hear the word cancer, it hits you pretty hard, and you ask why it can't be you instead of him, and things like that, right? As parents, you always want to take that burden on for them, but this was something we couldn't do that way. And yeah, so we talked to the doctors. They actually gave us a protocol for how things were going to go, and we had to stay in the oncology ward of the kids, the Stollery Hospital. And the Stollery Hospital, for folks that may not know, is a world-class children's hospital we have here in Edmonton. And because we lived within an hour and a half of Edmonton, we could still live at home and take Thomas in if he got sick. Because what happens is the chemo basically is there to kill all the cancer cells, but it also takes away all the disease fighting cells you have as well. So if he did catch a cold or any kind of a sniffle or an infection, then we'd have to run him to the city. We'd go to Merithorpe first, get him on an IV, and then take the ambulance to the city and stay in the city, usually for a week or so in the Stollery.
Who looked after all the stuff then while you were going back and forth? Like, who looked after the cattle and like all the stuff that you guys were doing?
Yeah, so everybody kind of gathered around, right? Like my brother and sister-in-law lived just down the road, so the twins went there that first week, basically. It was just like throw everything together, and I actually had to put embryos in on the Tuesday. So we took them in on a Sunday. On the Tuesday, I had to put embryos in some cows from Argentina, these embryos. So it was kind of a big deal. And so I came home, and I had all the paperwork with me, of how to do it and everything. So I had to be home, and we quickly did that. And then I headed back in, and and then Jill and I took turns staying with them at the stollery. They always have a bed, like a cot in the room with the child, so you can stay, and sleep there in the room with them and stuff. So that's pretty cool. But so we kind of took turns that first week or so,
Mm.
and then but Jill really took on a lot of it because I had some commitments with the Angus Association too that fall and stuff. So it was a crazy time. We had lots, neighbors would come. We'd tear down a fence just 3 days before Thomas had to go to the hospital, and so it had to be rebuilt and things like that. So six guys showed up one day and we built a fence,
Mm.
and I'm fortunate I farmed with my mom and dad, so dad was able to cover, the day to day chores, and other people helped out and stuff. So
Hmm.
it was definitely a community kind of a thing to get through those first. The first month was really intense,
Hmm.
and then we figured it out.
So how did it
Cool
feel?
thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, kind of just an example of how cool the nurses and everything are in the hospital is there was a nurse called Erin that was Thomas's kind of main nurse at the start, and we'd put up pictures of hockey players and stuff in his room, and she kind of admitted to Thomas that she didn't know anything about hockey, and he was having none of that, so he actually challenged her for 5 days later to do a quiz on hockey, and she was to study up and everything. So he made a quiz up, and she studied it. She got 7 out of 10 on her quiz, and
Mm.
but it just kind of shows the extra mile the nurses there go to because, and I guess the Thomas had T cell um, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, so it's ALL they call it, which is the best kind of childhood cancer to have. Really, it's the most treatable, and they do the best on their treatment and stuff. So we were really lucky. You find out pretty fast how lucky you are,
Mm.
even though it's a tough situation. There's and in the ICU, there was other problems, and babies, and so it's yeah, it's a shock at the start, but then you start to realize how lucky you are and what
Mm.
your support programs are like, and who's out there for you. So we were sure lucky.
And how's the Stollery Hospital like? Would you say just overall they just do a really good job? Like I've heard a lot of good things about them. Was that your
Yeah,
experience too?
it's funny because you sit in the tractor in the winter and you're feeding your cows, and there'd be a radiothon or a fundraiser come on the radio, right? And you hear some of the stories, and you get a little drippy, and you pull over, and then you send your $50 in, and you're like, well, my kids were all born healthy and everything. We'll never need it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of that old thing about 10 fingers, 10 toes, everything's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then all of a sudden you need it, and you really realize how important that hospital is, and it's funded by a lot of fundraised dollars and donated money. So like, yeah, the normal healthcare would be there, but it's so much more than a normal hospital because of the money that's donated and raised. So
Mm.
the idea that there's a cot there, there's video games for the kids to play, there was the kitchen in the oncology ward that you could make yourself soup or whatever, and um,
Yeah, well, I can
other
tell.
groups would bring.
Oh, yeah. I was just
Go
gonna
go
say,
ahead.
I can tell that it means a lot to you because on your bull sales, you always donate like at least one heifer towards a stollery, right? And it's amazing how high that heifer goes. A lot of people donating a lot of money, so you're taking it a step farther. Like, yes, it's helped you, but you're like giving back in so many ways, right? By raising awareness, but also actually raising a lot of money in your sales and probably other places too.
Yeah, it's definitely hit home for us pretty hard,
Mm-hmm.
and so we try to do our best that way and donate to others. Another group that really helps is the Kids with Cancer Society, and
Mm.
They've actually got a house just right beside the stollery, and so what they do is they initially you'll get a within 3 or 4 days of being in the hospital, this huge backpack shows up, and it's got passes to different places, coupons, fuel cards, things to help out with parking and all that, and then just literature, and then they have people that work in the hospital that come see you and stuff. So because it's pretty shocking the first little bit, right? And so the Kids with Cancer Society is pretty huge too, and they've been really helpful to us. Val Faluzzi is the I guess the executive director, and she just does an awesome job. And
Mm.
so Thomas has got involved a little bit with helping them out too, and fundraising with them and volunteering, and they're pretty awesome because you don't really realize how expensive it gets, and how much time being in the city can be, and there's so many other good outfits too. Like Ronald McDonald House helps a lot of families we knew and things like that too. So
Mhm.
it's 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 a tough situation, but there's lots of people that help and lots of ways to get help. So it's kind of a cool community you get into.
Yeah, and what was that like for you, Kirk? Because, you're like me, kind of raised up on the farm and, you kind of pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and, you're going to be independent and do your thing. And then all of a sudden, there's all these people that are helping you as you're gone, right? Helping you fix a fence, helping you like with the Kids Cancer Society, the stollery, the nurses, just all the support and help that you got. What was it like to take that? Like, that must have been a bit of an adjustment for you.
Yeah, we like you say, as at farm kids and rural kids, it's you're supposed to get up, wipe the dirt off, and move on, right?
Yeah.
And we were never real huggy in our family or anything like that. You don't show emotion. You don't. When you're at something, the worst thing you could do to get your parents mad at you was to have a temper tantrum or something in front of other people, right? And show emotion and so that's just how it is. And but we learned. I did get a book from a lady pretty early on that it was based on, and I don't have it anymore. I must have passed it on to someone else, but it was about learning how to receive gifts and receive help and things like that, right? Because
Mm,
the gist of it was that you're not, you're not being overly, I don't know what the word is, but takey or taking advantage of people when people want to give you a gift because and want to help because it makes them feel better too about the situation. So they can help and show their support, and so you have to learn how to take gifts and how to take gratitude. And
mhm,
that was a bit of a struggle first. I think both of us are more willing to say thank you, but to also take it instead of just saying no, 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 because and maybe learning to hug a little more and things like that.
mhm,
Some people needed that hug, not they didn't just need to give it to you, but they needed it to feel a little better too, right? So if we could help with that, I think that's pretty huge. So yeah, we learned a lot of that, and with mom going through what she went through, there was a lot more hugs and her and Thomas could kind of go through that together. They were both
mm,
lost their hair at the same time and stuff. So we have pictures of them both bald and
mm,
and they could talk about that a bit too. And I think they're closer because of it and they could show their emotions to each other a little more
mm,
than maybe she could before too. So
mhm,
so yeah, it's a big part of letting go a little bit. And if you have to have a cry once in a while, go ahead.
mhm,
Nobody's those people aren't going to judge you like you think you would, right? And
mhm.
so yeah, I think we did learn quite a bit that way, and hopefully we've come out the other side a little better that way too. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with giving somebody a hug once in a while and
Yeah.
and and taking what they want to give and what they want to help you with.
Mhm. Yeah, well, let's talk about okay, so Thomas, he went through this chemotherapy for how long was it that he I just wanna see, like, I want to get to the end of the story here. And there is a happy ending, which is really a blessing.
Yeah, so basically within a month and a half, he felt better, right?
Mhm,
Like the drugs he was on, and the chemo. He did a little bit of radiation too, but the drugs kind of took care of the cancer and got it out of him, right? And
mm,
so, but the gist is that you have to go through 3.5 years of chemo to keep those cells at bay.
mhm,
So they don't really say you're in remission, but you're not. You have cancer, but you don't have the symptoms, I guess,
mm,
through the chemo. So besides him getting an infection once in a while and going to the hospital, it was pretty good sailing, really. He missed some things. He missed some school. He got through school though and everything, but basically, yeah, it was 3.5 years of taking the pills and the chemo, and then once you get through that, we had a big party and all his friends came and we had the last pill. And then 5 years after that is when they will, you got to go for a checkup every couple months. And then at the 5 year mark, they officially told him he was a cancer survivor. So that was a
mm,
that was a big day.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, that was kind of now he's healthy, and you kind of almost forget about it. You don't forget about it, but
It's in the
you're
past.
not going through the daily grind.
Yeah.
and going through all that. So that, yeah, now he's healthy, does well. It took away some of the things he could have been doing at that time. There wasn't any sports in a time where you figure out what you're good at and what sports you want to be in. He
Hmm.
got to show cattle. He was strong enough to do that through the years and did well with that. And so, yeah, Thomas never wanted to be that kid that had cancer kind of a thing. He wanted it to be something else, right? He didn't want people to first be worried about catching it from him or anything like
Hmm.
that, but also that he didn't want to be treated differently because of it. So I think we got through that pretty well.
Yeah.
He's
And what's he doing now? So he's graduated.
yeah, he graduates on Friday. Actually, we're gonna have the official graduation, and then he's enrolled in radio and television arts in Nate. So he wants to do what you're doing,
Be
and
like an announcer or
his
talking.
dream is to be a sports guy. Yeah, he wants to be a sports announcer someday. His
Cool.
real dream is and be on TV and stuff. But we'll see
Yeah.
how it all goes. There's lots of career choices in that, and
Yeah.
and we're encouraging him to to follow his dreams. Right? It's do what you really want to try when you're young, and you don't need a lot of money. You don't you don't have a family to support, all that sort of thing. If it works out, great. If not, there's farming or anything else, right? we,
Yeah.
we want these kids to be happy and not be stuck into just what dad did or something like that, right?
I feel the same way. Yeah, I always tell my kids, like, you guys do what you want to do. You don't just do because you feel pressure from me or feel pressure from your dad. Like, what do you really want to do? And go after it. And that might change, right? Like, it might change many times, but just go after the things that you think you want to do. I think, I appreciate you sharing all this, by the way, Kirk, but I think what I'd like to do now is, do you have any words? Like, there's other people that are dealing with illnesses with their kids, um, or they know people that are, and they don't maybe know how to help them, how best to support them. What would you say to somebody like that who's like, okay, I want to help my friends, my family? What would you say to them? What's maybe one of the best things that they could do that would be helpful for somebody that went through what you guys went through with Thomas?
Yeah, well, first I guess I'd start with families that are maybe going through this or will be going through it soon. We kind of took the attitude to be positive. The doctors know what they're doing. They're the experts on this.
Hmm.
And no amount of me looking things up on the internet and finding some herb or anything like that is going to change. So we kind of took a positive approach. Let the doctors do their jobs. And sure, we had some bad days and some good days, but you never wanted to show Thomas or anyone else really that things were going to be all right, and that you wanted to trust them and be positive. I think being positive helps. If you feel like things are going to be all right, I sure think it helps. And so we sure didn't want to get into being a victim and blaming this doctor or that nurse, anything like that. And I don't think that helps anybody. So we were strong on that. And as far as families, I think just little things help out. A card here, a visit to the hospital. Sometimes you get in the hospital for a week at a time, and you just kind of drive each other crazy, right? And so some of our best days were when somebody just showed up out of the blue and just for half an hour came and visited, right? And kind of, I'd go for a walk or Jill'd go for a walk and they'd play a game with Thomas or something like that.
Hmm.
One cool thing is Thomas and we'd been in the hospital probably a week or so, and it was during Jill's busy time, as she wasn't available to come as much, and so we were kind of just getting on each other's nerves, and we'd listen to the sports station in Edmonton, the radio station, every morning, 1260, and they had a couple of morning guys on there. So I thought, I'll just send them a text. So I sent a text in to see if one of them might be available for a visit sometime, and so within 2 hours, they both come, both
Oh.
the morning guys. There's Dustin Nielsen and Kyle Chase at the time. Dustin's become a pretty good friend of Thomas's now and kind of a mentor
Hmm.
going forward. But they came and played video games, just something like that. They Dustin brought Thomas a picture, a signed picture with Ovechkin and stuff, and it just kind of helped out and brightened his day and stuff like that, right? So little things like that. These families don't need $1,000 check. They don't need you know
You probably won't say no to
that
that
sort
though.
of a thing. Yeah, it's not just a financial thing where you scratch a tire, or buy something for them. It's just little things. We got a card in the mail from a person from the community, about not that we knew really well, but with a $50 gas card in it, and just
Mm,
that one time we didn't have to worry about paying for gas, so
mm-hmm.
just little things like that. It just kind of uplifts a family and gives them, that there's other people there,
Mm-hmm.
that know what's going on and want to help out a little bit, and just,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it doesn't have to be real expensive. It's just a card here, a little gift, and something to
Yeah.
brighten the kid's day when he's stuck in the hospital. Thomas's school did a thing where they made a bunch of T-shirts that they all wore, that we're gonna fight cancer, and it had boxing gloves on and stuff. So just a way to, that Thomas thought everybody had his back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So little things like that are sure important to a family, I think, anyway, and helps get through it.
Is there anything that wasn't helpful? Like, like anything that you would say, maybe don't say this to people, or, is there anything like that where you're just like, there's certain things that maybe just weren't helpful?
Yeah, I guess for people that come to visit, or that want to help, don't bring up the negative side of it. Like if a family's trying to be positive, you don't need somebody coming in there and, oh God, how can you get through this? Why, how can this happen to you? Like when mom and Thomas were both sick at the same time, someone would come up and, well, what are the odds that you could have two people in the same family at the same time, and I don't want to work out those odds. And
Yeah.
you don't want to be part of that,
Mm,
so I guess if people want to, I guess if people want to be victims, and try to take you with them into that victimhood, just politely push them aside, and don't get associated with that, because it's a dark well you could get into, I think, and it doesn't help at all. So we weren't rude to those types of people, but we just kind of moved them to the side, I guess. And I
mhm.
don't know how you do that without appearing rude, but sometimes you got to be a little bit brutal too, and
Yeah. Say, "I don't
stick
appreciate."
up for your people and your family, and just say, okay, thanks, but that's not helping, right?
Mhm. Yeah, well, that's good.
But
That's helpful. Thanks for sharing that.
yeah,
Yeah, so do you have any closing, actually, I want you to share one more story. There's a story of, I think you mentioned it to me, about Thomas, that big poster or something that he had, and it was a signed poster, and he decided to donate it or something, and then somebody ended up buying it back or something. Can you share
yeah.
that?
So we about November or December that year, that there's a group of ladies that worked at the office at the Canadian Angus Association, and they had suggested to me that if I was up for it, that we could do a fundraiser for the Kids with Cancer Society and our Angus Foundation, and they wanted to call it the Baldy fundraiser. And with Angus cattle, when you cross them with a Hereford or a Simmental, you're going to get an animal with a white face, and so we call those Baldies in the business, especially the Angus Hereford, the black Baldies or the red Baldies is what we call them, right? So they suggested the name for that, and I was like, yeah, I think that's a great idea. So the idea was that myself and Michael Latimer, who's from an Angus family that worked for the association at the time, we would have people donate money on either of our behalves, and whoever had the most money, raised for them, would have to shave their head at our annual meeting in June. So so we actually donated our half for that year to that cause, and I think it was like $8,000 or $9,000 we donated or made that year. And a young lady that we know that was about 5 or 6 years older than Thomas, she donated one of her heifers, and that money went to the cause and stuff. So we'd actually got a opportunity. Thomas was a big fan of, this is a long story, but
It's okay.
Thomas was a big fan of Thomas Vanek, a hockey player from Austria. And he really liked him because he spelt his name right. He had an H in his Thomas, where most of the Thomases, especially in Europe, don't have an H. But so he was a big fan of Thomas Vanek. And a friend of ours who's a nurse at the Stollery, she found out about this, and he played for the Buffalo Sabres at the time. So her friend had season tickets, so they donated the tickets to Thomas, and we got to go to a game in December with the Sabres. And I was able to contact the Oilers, and heard about Thomas' story, so they arranged so that we could meet Thomas Vanek before the game down in the dressing room area. So he got a signed stick from Thomas and pictures and everything, and it was pretty cool. And Thomas Vanek said after or just before the game, he said, "Well, if we don't lose by 10, you guys can come back and you can meet the whole team." So they actually won the game. We went down to the dressing room again, and Thomas, even though he was 8, he's just a tiny little guy, right? He probably only weighed 40 pounds. So this little bald kid, and the team just were awesome. They brought a stick out, and every player signed it and came and talked to Thomas and everything. And it turned out Ryan Miller, who had just been the goalie for the U.S. team in the Olympics, he actually had a foundation for kids with cancer. So he came out and talked to Thomas at 10, 15 minutes, got a picture with him, and that was pretty cool. We go home, and then in that next day, I get an email from his foundation saying that Ryan wanted to give something to Thomas. And Thomas and I talked, and he's like, "Wow, I've already got so much." He said, they wanted to give him a jersey, a Ryan Miller signed hockey jersey. So Thomas asked if he could donate the jersey to the fundraiser, to the Angus Baldy fundraiser. And so Ryan said, "Oh yeah, I think that's a great idea," and everything. So the jersey came in the mail. We put it in the auction. Thomas went with us to the auction, this fundraising auction. We had to finalize the Baldy fundraiser. And so he was modeling the jersey, and I'd put together about $1,000 to buy the jersey for Thomas with some help from family and friends and stuff. And the auction started, and within a minute, it was way past $1,000. And Thomas, I had to stop bidding, and Thomas is looking at me like I'm the biggest jerk in the world.
Because he wanted that jersey.
He did want that jersey, yeah. Even though he donated it, he was hoping to get it back. And so it ended up selling for $2,800. And a lady from Manitoba came up, and she bought the jersey, and she came up and she told Thomas that she just wanted him to fill the jersey out someday. So it was a pretty emotional time.
Oh, I can
And,
imagine.
just an awesome lady. And she so yeah, Thomas has the jersey now. He's actually got a picture with it, and he's going to do some pictures for his grad
Nice.
with the jersey. So yeah, so it ended up raising $2,900, I think, or no, $29,000
Oh, wow.
total, the whole foundation, the fundraiser. And we ended up both Michael Latimer, myself, and the new CEO Rob Smith, we all shaved our heads that night as part of the deal. And so it's pretty cool. It raised a lot of awareness, and it was pretty emotional and everything. But yeah, no, it was cool. So lots of things like that happened through the time, and just random strangers at time donating and being part of it. So yeah, it was. I don't think I'd want to do it again and go through it, but with lots of help and lots of support, it all went well. And Thomas is healthy now, and he has no greater chance really of getting cancer again than anybody else out there. So yeah, we were lucky. And, everything went pretty well. And yeah, I think Thomas will be involved with Stollery and the Kids with Cancer Society the rest of his life too, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully if he gets a job in the media business, he can use that platform to help even more too. So
Yeah, I'd love to talk to Thomas sometime because I feel like that's what I want to do is I want to help other people through this. And I mean, for him to be always already thinking about that as his age, about how he can use a platform to help others, that's pretty special. That's not probably maybe what a lot of, how old is he? 17, 18?
yeah, just turned 18.
Yeah, not a lot of 18-year-olds might be thinking about that already, right? So that's really special.
Well, yeah, and he did some cool thing. He got to co-MC the Stollery Gala. They have a black tie fundraising gala with Carrie Dahl and Daryl McIntyre. So that was pretty cool that he got to be up there. And
Yeah.
and he he's, I guess, being raised in the cattle business and 4-H and being the first child too. He doesn't have any confidence issues as far as being on a mic and stuff. So he was bantering pretty good with Daryl and stuff. back and forth. So
Yeah.
I think that was part of why he wants to do this too. Is he got a pretty good voice, and the confidence helps, and
Yeah.
definitely he'd definitely do a better job of this than I would.
Oh, I think you're doing great, Kirk. Do you have any closing words for us? I want to wrap up the podcast now, but is there any closing words that you want to say before we wrap this up?
um,
You said
yeah,
a
I
lot,
guess
but
just like I said before, if this happens to you or someone you know, be positive, work through it. Um, and if it inspires you to help out some less fortunate folks or important things like the Stollery or any charity, there's so many worthy causes out there and so many people that need help that
hmm
and it's a therapeutic way. Like I always found it's easier to raise money for somebody else than it is for yourself, right? And in your own businesses and stuff like that. So
hmm
get involved with other organizations, help out. There's so many things that you can do, but yeah, stay positive. Be strong, give somebody a hug.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to cry sometimes, right?
There you go.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you so much, Kirk. I really appreciated you sharing this. I know it was hard, and it's the first time that you've really been able to share this whole kind of story on a platform like this. So I just really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's cool what you're doing. When I heard you talk about your dad, I've got a lot of respect for him too. So when you get those stories out there to the world, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of amazing stories from these everyday people that we don't hear. We hear from all the celebrities and all the politicians, but there's so many stories right in our back door, right around our neighborhoods and our communities that I just want to get out there. And yeah, and your story is very special. So thanks, Kirk.
You bet. Thank you.
You bet. This episode is brought to you by my company, Power Fitness Online. We are a tight-knit fitness community, and we guide you every step of the way to get fit and stay fit through our live workouts, nutrition coaching, and incredible support team. Go to powerfitnessedson.com to learn more. Thank you for tuning into the podcast today. If you enjoyed it, please leave a positive review on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Music, or wherever you're listening. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, I would love to see your comments. I would love to know what you think about this episode and interact with you. I love hearing from you. Once again, I'm Carla Rand, and this is The Carla Rand Show, and I can't wait to see you next week for our next episode.